Howdy folks, welcome back to War Thunder with the mighty Jingles. It has been a while, I know. I'm having a bit of a love-hate relationship with War Thunder at the moment. It's not helped by picking a lineup that includes aircraft like the Wirraway single-engine light bomber and the Gloucester Gladiator biplane, and getting into games where your opponents include P-47 Thunderbolts. You can imagine how much fun that is. But the thing about War Thunder is, when it's bad, it's diabolical. But when it's good, it's awesome. It's just one of those games. You keep slogging through all of the crap and the bullshit just to get that one game that makes it all worthwhile. Well, last night I had two that made it all worthwhile, which is a bit of a rarity. I did have to suffer through 11 consecutive defeats in a row before I eventually got these two games. But it made it all worthwhile. That is the Bristol Beaufort Mark 8. And the Mark 8 Bristol Beaufort was used exclusively by the Royal Australian Air Force, as you can tell by the roundels on the wings. The Beaufort was designed as a fast twin-engined light bomber, and in the 1930s, with biplane fighters as the main kind of opposition, it was exceptionally good in that role. By the time the Second World War broke out, however, well, BF-109s weren't impressed by the speed of the Beaufort, and the Royal Air Force withdrew this thing from service in 1942. Meanwhile, in Australia, the Australians really had their backs up against the wall. Faced with the imminent threat of invasion from Japan, they were only too keen to get their hands on whatever scraps the US Army Air Force and the Royal Air Force were willing to throw under the table to them. And the Beaufort in Royal Australian Air Force service actually fought right up until the end of the Second World War in 1945. Australia, of course, facing the threat of imminent invasion from Japan, and the Beaufort at the time was the ideal aircraft for the Royal Australian Air Force because it saw service with Royal Air Force Coastal Command as a maritime patrol aircraft, and if you're facing a seaborne invasion, you need lots and lots of maritime patrol aircraft. And Australia built lots and lots of Beauforts. And that's the thing about the Australian Beauforts, with the exception of the first 6, they were all built in Australia, using Australian materials. And, oh, hang on a minute. When you're in third-person view like this, you have no direct control over the guns in the Beaufort. It's not like the Blenheim, which has one machine gun which you can directly control, but as long as you just keep on the tail. And that's the thing. This thing was designed to be able to outrun fighters like that pea shooter, which makes it easy to stay on his tail when he's trying to get away from you and just let your nose gunner do his business. But anyway, I digress. Chasing after fighters is fun and all that, but this is a ground strike mission, and I'm in one of the few bombers on the team, so it behooves me to actually go after the ground targets again. So while I diverted over here to have some fun with the pea shooter and reload the bombs are reloaded. It's time to get back and start killing those ground targets. Now, the Beaufort. The British actually only used the Beaufort up until the Mark IV. Although they did run into problems with the Bristol Taurus engine, at least the early versions of it. Later versions of the Bristol Taurus engine were very, very good engines, but the early versions had some issues. And so the British switched over to the Pratt & Whitney Twin Wasp engines until improved versions of the Taurus could be introduced. Now, Australia they had some concerns because these Bristol Taurus engines had to be shipped halfway around the world from Britain to be assembled into the Australian versions of the Beaufort. They thought, no, too risky. And so they switched over all of their aircraft to the Pratt & Whitney Twin Wasp engine as well. Obviously an American design. They also used American Curtiss electric propellers. And if you have a look at the top of the aircraft there's a sort of diamond-shaped radio antenna. Well, that was an Australian thing as well. It's one of the ways of recognising one of the Australian Beauforts, as if the, Royal Australian Air Force roundels on the wing weren't enough of a giveaway. But the British Beauforts all had circular radio aerials on top. In fact, it's probably safe to say that the variants of the Beaufort from the Mark V on, they weren't really British aircraft. They were Australian aircraft because they were pretty much all used by the Royal Australian Air Force and designed to Royal Australian Air Force specifications. And the Australians did love messing around with this aircraft. Some of the Australian Beauforts even had 50 caliber machine guns mounted in the wings. When Australia was dragged into the Second World War, they certainly didn't have much of a native aircraft design industry, whereas they certainly had the capability to manufacture aircraft. With the exception of a couple of famous designs like the Wirraway and the Boomerang, almost all of the aircraft that Australia used were their own versions of other people's aircraft, like the Lockheed Hudson from America, and of course the Bristol Beaufort from Britain. And of course, you can't really talk about the Royal Australian Air Force and Bristol aircraft without talking about the Bristol Beaufighter, the legendary broken fighter in War Thunder. And of course, since the Beaufighter was actually based on the Beaufort, and Australia had plenty of experience in building over 700 Beauforts, it made it easy for Australian aircraft production to switch over to and start producing large numbers of native versions of the Beaufighter as well. Another aircraft like the Bristol Beaufort that saw far more service in the hands of the Royal Australian Air Force than it did in its native Britain. Meanwhile, back to the game. I picked the Beaufort at the start of this match because, one, it's ground strike, and I fully expected to get my ass shot down after doing my first bombing run down this canyon, and it just didn't seem to happen. And I was actually quite disappointed because I wanted to jump into a Hawker Hurricane Mark 1 and go and play with the fighters. But the enemy team just wouldn't oblige me by shooting me down. As it happens, I got to play with the enemy fighters anyway, and I didn't have to jump into a Hurricane to do it. Here comes a Buffalo. Let's have a look. And, well, this thing was designed as a fast, light bomber, able to outrun any kind of pursuit aircraft, which means it's really, really easy to stay on the tail of little things like this Buffalo, and we're hitting him. He's got to be thinking, what are you doing? Piss off, you big bully. I'm the fighter. My bombs are back up, but there's no way I'm going to get near any of those remaining ground targets before this match is over, so I've just played with the fighters. I mean, I'm heading in the direction of the remaining ground targets, but nope, there it goes. Somebody else took him out. Somebody probably got shot down, jumped into a bomber as their last aircraft, and just cleaned up the remaining ground targets. So that was quite a pleasant little game in the Bristol Beaufort. Didn't expect to play the whole game in the Bristol Beaufort, but sometimes the enemy team just won't oblige you by shooting you down so you can jump into a fighter. So hey, you may as well take advantage of it. Anyway, as mentioned, that game came after an 11-game streak of unbroken defeats playing War Thunder arcade battles, and I thought, has my luck changed? Is it worth pushing my luck and having another go? So I had another go. And whereas in this game in the Beaufort, I was pretty much flying an Australian aircraft despite having a British lineup, for the next match I chose a German lineup and ended up flying nothing but Italian aircraft. This wasn't the first time last night that I played with the Germans. I'd tried playing high-tier German jets and got sick and tired of trying and failing to catch and shoot down B-57s and Canberras with the Horton 229. And instead I thought, well, I'm having a bit more fun and success down here at low level, so a rank 1 and reserve German lineup is what I went with, and straight away picked an Italian aircraft. The G50 Freccia, Italian for arrow, and it was an appropriate name because this aircraft was fast. And like most Italian aircraft, very, very manoeuvrable. This was actually Italy's first all-metal monoplane enclosed cockpit fighter. It wasn't very pretty though. It kind of looks a bit like a humpbacked whale. The G50 was armed with twin 12.7mm machine guns, which at the outbreak of the First World War was considered a little inadequate, but in rank 1 and reserve battles in War Thunder it's more than good enough. But the funny old thing about the G50 is that, like the Beaufort, it saw its greatest success not in its country of origin. The G50 was obviously used by Italy. It's an Italian aircraft. It actually fought in the Battle of Britain. Not a lot of people know that. There was an Italian G50 squadron based in Belgium, which saw action in the early stages of the Battle of Britain and didn't do very well, and was withdrawn back to Italy. It was also used by the Croatian Air Force in small numbers right up until the end of the Second World War, but the country that saw success out of all proportion to the number of aircraft that they actually had their hands on during World War II with the G50... Hang on, will I just kill this guy? There we go. Yes, was Finland. which probably shouldn't come as a great surprise to anybody, because that's pretty much what the Finns do, isn't it? They just take other people's stuff and wreck faces with them. Finland had something like 30 of these aircraft, a mere handful, during the Winter War and the continuation war against Russia. And with this handful of obsolete aircraft, the combat kill to loss ratio that the Finnish Air Force achieved with the G50 Freccia was 33 kills for every one of these things that they lost. That is just unbloody believable. But that's Finland for you. That's just what they do. And that's pretty much what I was doing in this game. I mean, 33-1, I wish, but it wasn't that far off. And I am making these... Ooh, that's not good. Yeah, this thing is fast. A little bit too fast. I've now managed to get this Russian biplane on my ass. And while these Italian aircraft were very, very manoeuvrable, that's a Russian biplane. I'm not going to shake him. Well, I can shake him, but I'm not going to be able to outturn him. So pretty much all I'm doing right now is using the manoeuvrability of this thing not to try to circle around and get on him. And no, don't be tempted to go after another target. You've got a Russian biplane on your arse, Jingles. He will kill you dead. What you need to do is get somebody else to shoot him down for you. And just concentrate on staying evasive and not getting hit while your team do that. And your team have just done that, which leaves me free to start shooting at other targets. This thing really, really does lose a lot of altitude in the turns, however. It makes it very, very hair-raising when you're dogfighting at low altitude. And I do definitely pick on these. Anything that has the word I-15 or I-153 in its name is a priority target for me when I'm flying low-tier battles. Not because I'm picking on them. Well, I am picking on them. And I'm picking on them because they're bloody dangerous aircraft. And you know, I have to admit, the G50 really surprised me. I don't know why I picked this aircraft rather than, you know, something German in a German lineup. But for some reason I thought, yeah, I really haven't flown this thing much. I'll give it a go. And oh, hang on. Need to be real careful here. Don't want to shoot my wingman down. Yep, we got him. Good. Oh, crap, taking fire. But yeah, I thought, well, I haven't flown this thing much. Let's give it a shot. And was very, very pleasantly surprised at how capable it is in, you know, when it's matched up against its contemporaries. This was a 1930s designed aircraft. It first flew in 1937. And when it gets matched against other aircraft that flew at the same period. Poor little KI-10. Yeah, it really, really is a great little fighter. And I had no idea it was this good. I mean, it's nimble, it's quick, it's manoeuvrable. I mean, it's not as manoeuvrable as a Russian biplane. It's not as manoeuvrable as a German biplane, but it's no slouch. And you'll see, when we get to the battle results screen of this match, just how easy it is to get this thing fully upgraded with just one good game. And this wasn't that good a game. I mean, it was pretty good, but people have sent me replays in where they get far more kills. There's another Russian. He must die because Russian. Yeah, got him. Yeah, the G50 Freccia. There we go, game over. Check this out. Just waiting for the battle results, and bingo, there you go. 9 kills without getting shot down. Flying against Russian reserve biplanes. You think, oh, but they're just reserves. Yeah, but they're Russian reserve biplanes. You know what they're like. This thing was a really pleasant surprise, and it started me thinking, are there any other little hidden gems in the Italian side of the German tech tree? I mean, I know everybody flies the MC202 Folgore, because it's a sexy looking aircraft, and it's pretty good. But aircraft like the G50, aircraft like the CR42 Falco, that you hardly ever see anybody flying. Are we, you know, missing out? Because I had a lot of fun flying the G50 and was very, very surprised at how good it was. In fact, if you have a look at the post-battle research screen, you can see that this is not, I mean, I'm not just smurfing it up down at low levels in a fully upgraded and tricked out G50. I'd hardly ever flown this thing. But that one battle was enough to unlock almost everything on this aircraft. And despite not being fully upgraded, it was easily capable of holding its own against those legendarily dangerous Russian Tier 1 and reserve biplanes. So I think I might have to dedicate a little bit more time in War Thunder to exploring the possibilities in the Italian side of the German tech tree, because if they're as full of surprises as the G50, I can see myself having a lot of fun. That's it for today, folks. Take care. I'll catch you next time.